rode my Iron 883 across the country. It was one of the best challenges I've had in my life. I've proven all the small bike naysayers wrong. I made it home in one piece, free of numb hands from vibrations, and without a sore ass from the missing sofa most other bikes designed for long distance travel have. Don't get me wrong, I love those bikes. And this spring, I'll have a bike in my stable better designed for touring. But what I do have from experiencing the challenges of riding long distance on a small bike are the memories and stories that I can share with anyone willing to listen. To touring on a small bike. In the last video, we covered the preparations of long distance and small bike adventures. It's not necessary to see that video before this one, but when you get a chance, check out the first video in this series. What should you expect during an adventure on a small bike? I love talking about these adventures, so let's get started. When touring on a smaller bike, you won't be able to travel as far as bikes that are designed for long distance. One of the answers why is right between your legs. Hey, get your mind out of the gutter and back on the bike. I'm talking about that tiny fuel tank. The Iron 883 has a 3.3 gallon tank. That's small. The farthest I ever traveled before getting off my bike and fueling up was 148 miles. I was riding along Route 60 in Arizona between Prescott and Slolo. It was one of the fastest and most fun rides I've had. It was even better because the views were so amazing. A small bike will not be as comfortable as a dedicated touring bike. Being forced to take more breaks from riding to fuel up is actually a benefit. I typically stopped about every 100 miles or so, and I found that when I tried to push through as many miles as I could without stopping, reduced the time traveling on the bike in one day. More on this later in the video, but those breaks not only allowed me to rest and reset, but it's really hard to meet people while riding on a motorcycle. Those stops gave me an opportunity to chat with the many people oogling my long-distance small bike setup. And that setup is really important. In the last video, I talk a lot about this. Even though you've set your bike up and you've done a bunch of shakedown rides, you will always need to make adjustments. For the Route 66 trip, the setup I had when I left was similar to what I had when I returned. But so many factors changed that I altered things a bit. I should have learned my lesson from my long-distance cycling adventures, but nope, I didn't. I took way too much stuff with me that by the time I got to Central Missouri, I shipped a bunch of stuff home. The Route 66 series was the first time I had the joy of documenting any long-distance trip for anyone other than my close family and friends. So I planned on editing on the road. That lasted about a week, and then I shipped my laptop home and focused on the adventure. That was a wise choice. After that, I was experiencing the adventure rather than documenting it. There would be plenty of time to edit after the adventure ended. My luggage setup stayed relatively the same throughout the trip, but I altered how I tied it down about 5 times throughout the trip. Not only did how much I packed alter how I secured my luggage, but I learned how to secure it better as the trip went on. Anyone that's traveled long distance knows that adventure begins when things go wrong. That's what makes these type of adventures so much fun. And man, did things go wrong for me. My laptop died 2 days into the trip. I sent it home and bought another one the day I met D-Cycle, only to ship the new one home a week later. On day 9 along a dirt road near Stillwater, Oklahoma, my rear tire rubbed a hole in my ABS sensor wire, leaving me without ABS for most of the trip. I later repaired it on the cheap with a used sensor from eBay. In western New Mexico, I went hiking and forgot to put on sunscreen. I was 30 miles from the closest store, but luckily I was in a desert surrounded by a ton of aloe plants. The sunburn made for some challenging riding the next few days. An hour after I arrived in Flagstaff, the place I wanted to visit most along the trip, the skies opened up, delaying my ride by 3 days. On my way back, one of my GoPros was stolen in Oklahoma. I no longer have a Patreon set up, but some great supporters helped me buy a new GoPro shortly after the trip. In western Arizona, a squirrel chewed a hole through my sissy bar bag, making it impossible to close the zipper. I definitely had to alter my setup after that. And the big one, it rained non-stop the last week of the trip. I dangerously rode in a downpour in the Ozark Mountains in 40-degree weather. It was one of the few times I truly felt unsafe riding. Truth be told, I probably should have waited out the rain. Few of these are solely because I rode a small bike, but bikes designed for long-distance touring do have options to reduce the likelihood of some of these. I may sound like I'm complaining, but the truth is, I wouldn't change anything about that amazing trip. And a big reason why is one of the best experiences of any adventure. I'll admit it, I'm 100% biased towards small bike touring. But I feel how wonderfully ridiculous my iron look packed up like a Sherpa encouraged more people to approach me as I traveled along my adventure. I could be wrong. Maybe my personality had something to do with it, or I just looked approachable on my adventure. Whatever the reason, meeting everyone along the way is something I'll cherish forever. In spring of 2021, I'll have a type of bike that will fall much better into the category of touring bike than my iron. So I'll put this theory to the test. If you want to see my future adventures, hit that subscribe button now and follow me on Instagram, where you'll get the latest updates. What are your experiences touring on a small bike? Share them in the comments below.